Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose, the number one health podcast in the world. Thanks to each and every one of you that come back every week to become happier, healthier, and more healed. I don't think there's anything more interesting in the world than human story. And what I love about this podcast is I get to dive into the minds of people that are often mysterious. We don't know so much about them. We may see them on the big screen, but here we're getting to learn about them behind the scenes. And today's guest is someone who I met just a few moments ago. I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time. I'm so glad to finally have him in the studio. And in the few moments I've spent with him, I can already tell that we're going to have a great conversation. Please welcome to On Purpose, Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc is one of the biggest names in global sport. Charles currently races in Formula One driving for the legendary Ferrari since 2019, the youngest driver in history to be signed up by the team. Charles features in the hit Netflix series Drive to Survive and is loved by fans and sports community alike for his positive mindset and determined, straightforward approach. Charles, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person and to be here.
When I was researching, as I do for all my guests, I can listen to interviews, I'll read articles. You haven't done a lot of interviews. You don't talk so much about things publicly. I was wondering, why did you feel now was the right time and this was the right platform?
You've got something special in all the different interviews you do. I think you get out the best out of the people, and it's something very special. Of course, we do lots of interviews, but they are mostly based on our racing career, of course, which I'm very happy to speak of and about all the time. But it's good also to get to know the person behind the steering wheel. In our case, we always have a helmet as well, so it's difficult to put a face on the name sometimes. And I think it's a great way to maybe show a bit of myself.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for trusting me. And I want to say how grateful I am that you allowed us to have this conversation, because it's not always comfortable to take the helmet off and do this. And so I appreciate it. But let's dive straight in. I want to ask you, what would you have been if you weren't a race car driver?
Oh, good question to start with. Probably an architect. I love design in general. I wouldn't have been good enough to be an artist, but definitely an architect. I love architecture in general. It's another passion of mine. So yeah, probably an architect.
Nice. And do you think that some of that passion has helped with being a Formula One racer, with the engineering, the understanding of the car, the design? Do you think that's transferred or not really?
Not really, because obviously with my career, I had to stop quite early school to put myself into and having the best chances in order to succeed in that sport. You need to very early on taking crucial decisions. And my parents were always very supportive of that, which obviously helped me as well. But so I didn't do the study to get to being an architect or close of being an architect. But it's always something that interested me. So no, it did not help my racing career, but it's definitely something that I would like to look at once my career is done, to maybe be able to do something there.
Don't speak too soon. We don't need you. You've got many years ahead of you, so we'll put that out into the far future. When you first had the experience of driving your first ever race car as a young boy, I believe you were like 4 years old.
Yes, 3.5.
3.5. Walk us through what you remember. What was the first time you remember driving a car and you remember how you felt, and what was that feeling like?
Well, first of all, I started by total coincidence. I was a kid, 3.5 years old. I didn't want to go to school that day. And I said my father I was ill, and he believed me. By coincidence, he had to go and see his best friend, which owned a karting track. So I got in the car with him, went there, and then I was seeing the karting going around the track, and I was asking, can I try? But obviously at 3.5 years old, there are not really any karts made for a 3.5 years old kid. But luckily for me, the owner, which was Jules Bianchi's father, Philippe Bianchi, had a karting made for his son when he was 3.5. So there was everything ready. And I tried for the first time there. And I remember the first lap, they attached a rope to my karting, and there was an adult driving in front of me just to make sure that I would be able to turn, etc. And after the first lap, we took off the rope, and I went on until there was no fuel left. So it was an amazing feeling. Straight away, I enjoyed the feeling of being in control of a karting at such a young age. Was something very, very amazing to experience. And I love the adrenaline that it gave me. So it was definitely a very special moment. I cannot remember it because I was too young.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've got images that my father had done of this day, which gives you back a bit the feeling of the day.
Yeah, that's beautiful to be able to look back. Yeah, I was thinking, if you remember that from 3.5, that's impressive. I was like, I can't remember anything from when I was 3.5 years old. But pictures do such a wonderful job of doing that. Walk us through the level of discipline and rigor and training that you've had to adopt. I feel like the Formula One season is like relentless. It's long, it's tiring, it's exhausting. When I look at the amount of races there are, when I've spoken to other drivers, it's all encompassing. Like your whole life is absorbed into this.
Of course.
How have you allowed yourself, and we're getting to the end of the season right now as we're taping, how have you developed the stamina? Like, what does it take to see yourself through to the end when it's so grueling and so demanding?
It changes a lot in your career because you start in karting where there you are spending a lot of days on track, but it's always a track that is very close to your house. So even though you travel or you spend a lot of time in the car to get to the track, you are racing all day, you come back at home the evening, it's still quite easy in a way because it's all very, very close. Then you get to single-seaters, Formula 4, Formula 3, Formula 2, where you've got to travel a bit more all around Europe, I'll say. But you've only got like 12, 13 races to do in a year, so it's still not too much. It takes a lot of time, of course, but it's still not too much. And then you get to Formula 1 and it's 24 races now all over the world. And in between the races, you also got to do a lot of events, sponsorship events for the preparation of the races. I'm going in the simulator in Maranello. So lots of things are adding up, which makes it a season that is extremely tiring. And especially when we get to the end of the season, like it is now, it is more and more difficult. But then it's all about trying to plan the things better. I arrived the first year in Formula 1. And to be honest, I was a mess. I arrived and I was doing the flight myself. I will get to the track the day just before the practice will start. And I will be super tired. And especially the end of the season, then you don't manage to stay at your 100% all the time. And then, of course, with experience, you learn. Now there are a whole team of people helping me in all of this because it's super important to be 100% at the end of the season. And now, you plan the things better in order to keep a good quality of life, training, diet, sleeping is super important. The different time zones all over the world is very difficult to manage as well. But now I am up to speed with that. Yeah,
I love hearing that. I remember I've interviewed different athletes in different sports, and I remember speaking to one athlete who at the time was at the cusp of, I think, potentially going to one day become one of the best. And I remember asking him like what his routine was and how he prepared, and he didn't have one. And it didn't get better. Like it didn't improve from there. And then you see that it's hard to sustain a career like that. Walk us through, because I think people are fascinated, because I think anyone who's not a fan of F1 or hasn't watched Drive to Survive, as we were talking about earlier, or doesn't understand it, they don't recognize how physically demanding it is to sit in a car. I'll just give an example to everyone. I went go-karting like 2 weeks ago, and I was nowhere near going as fast as you go, obviously, in an electric go-kart. And I came back with like
the ribs.
Yeah, with it completely bruised, and that's just from like a little kids go-karting thing. It's so demanding in so many ways. First of all, walk us through your diet, your sleep. What is that routine like for you personally? What do you eat? What do you need to build in terms of working out, etc.? And then talk to me about what actually happens during a race to you, like what's going through your body and mind.
The sleep for me is the number one priority. It is so incredibly important, is where obviously you rest and recover all the energy in the body that you need, and it's something super important. So on that, I'm super strict. I'm a good sleeper. I probably sleep around 10, 11 hours a night. So really, really a long time.
Do you have any tricks for that, or are you just a good sleeper?
No, I'm a good sleeper.
Wow.
The only big problem I have is that I don't sleep in planes. For some reason, I struggle to sleep in planes, which I spend a lot of time. So I need to take the planes by day so I can stay awake and all of these kind of things. But again, that is part of planning. Diet, I've got a dietitian in Milan that is following me and sending me all the diet requirements. I used to have something very repetitive, which then you get bored of. Now it's a lot more diverse, so it's very difficult to get into the details of what I take, but it's more carbohydrates, especially once race day are coming. Our weight fluctuates a lot throughout a week of racing, because you get the Friday before the practice, driving practice, and you're quite heavy because there you ate a lot of carbohydrates. That takes the water. You drink a lot of water. You need to be well hydrated. But then we go through extreme heat inside the cockpit, so you lose so much water. And in some races, you can lose up to 3.5-4 kilos of water, which is very difficult then in the 1 or 2 days after to recover from that. Yeah, this is super important, the hydration plan and the dietitian plan, in order to be fully on it throughout the weekend. And then physically, it is a very strange sport in a way, because there are muscles that no other sports really use, which, especially the neck, by example. The neck is probably the hardest part to train properly, because it's full of little muscles that you don't use and that is very difficult to reproduce in a gym. So driving is basically the only training you can get for that, as much as you are trying with elastics to try and reproduce that. But it's very difficult. Whenever we get to the first day of practice in February after the winter break, you speak to all drivers, and at the end of the first day, they are all so tired, just because the neck is a very difficult one to use, but to train. But then lots of cardio training, it's super important. And another thing that is also difficult to train is the breathing techniques, because with the G-forces, sometimes it's very difficult to breathe normally. So we do a lot of apnea in the corners, but this is something that you get used years after years driving Formula One cars.
Yeah, wow. No, really great breakdown there, because I think you never think about, for most people, you never think about the neck. You're never thinking about, obviously, the breath. The losing of weight is incredible. You've talked about before that in your karting days, your mental health, or your resilience, your mindset was a lot weaker. How did you experience that? What did that look like back in the day? What do you mean by your mindset was weaker then?
I was extremely harsh on myself, which I think now is a strength, because I'm super honest with myself, and I don't like to be nice to myself whenever I do a mistake. I'm very harsh, and I'm very honest with myself. But at the same time, I think the reaction from that is extremely important. The way you react to mistakes you've done inside the car, this is where you manage to transform a mistake into something positive from learning from it. And when I was younger, I didn't have the right reaction. I will put myself so much down. It will also hurt my self-confidence. Now it's very different. I know that I got to a certain level because I worked hard, of course, because there's also a part of talent that you have when you are young. It's super important to keep the self-confidence super high in those difficult moments. Otherwise, you can lose a little bit the direction in which you need to work, and it can make things a bit more complicated. So that's where I was struggling when I was younger.
Hey everyone, it's Jay here. My wife and I have had so much fun creating our own sparkling tea, Junie. And I've got big news for you. It's at Target, and we'd love your support. If you can go out, grab a Junie, you'll be adding adaptogens and nootropics into your life with mood-boosting properties aimed at promoting a balanced and happy mind. Through our commitment to our wellness journey and striving to fuel our bodies with the healthiest ingredients, it's been our purpose to make healthy choices accessible for all, which is why Junie is now on shelves at Target. So head to our store locator at drinkjunie.com and find Junie at a Target near you. Yeah, I love that you brought that out, because I feel like everyone can relate to that. Like whether you drive cars or you don't, everyone can relate to the idea that we can be harsh on ourselves. We can be heavy on ourselves. We can be self-critical and judgmental. How did you learn to, let's say you've just done the first lap and you made a ton of mistakes, or you feel like you're behind. I can imagine that it's so easy for the next 2 laps to just be lost in criticizing yourself, and the thought in your head just being, should have taken that better, should have done this, should have done that. How did you grow to have a more positive relationship with that honesty and that self-criticism, as opposed to that thought repeating in your head? Has that happened before? Have you ever felt that where you're criticizing yourself during a race, or there's no time for that?
Actually, no. I think adrenaline helps us in our sport to not think too much, because you haven't got the time to think. You go from one corner to the other. If you're already thinking about your last corner, you're going to do a mistake at the next corner. So you've got to mentally reset at every corner. And if you did a mistake, you need to reset for the next corner, which is in 1 second. So it's super quick, but I think adrenaline helps you. I think where I struggle more is when you finish a race on multiple laps and you are looking back at it and you're like, okay, this I shouldn't have done that mistake. I should have known that. I should have prepared for that. And then I was putting myself down. And that had a much longer effect as well, because then you need to wait for the next race in order to move on. And that's in 1 or 2 weeks time. And for 1 or 2 weeks, you're like, okay, I just can't wait to be back in the karting to show what I can do. But in those last 2 weeks, you need to accept, obviously, the view of others, which was also something that was hurting me back in the past. And it's just not good for learning from your mistakes.
Are you excited for the next race to prove yourself? That's what it sounds like. Like there's that feeling of adrenaline of like, okay, I can't wait to be back on the track. Have you ever had a moment where you're like, I don't want to go back on the track because I'm scared, or I'm fearing losing or failure? Or
Never, because I love so much what I do. And in every tough times, I think I always like to remember myself when everything started, when I was 3.5, but I don't remember that time. So around 7 or 8 years old, the way I looked up to Formula One, the way I dreamt of being in the position I am today, a Ferrari Formula One driver, that's all I dreamed for. I still want to win a world championship, which is another dream of mine, and I'm working for that. But in all of the difficult moments, I always remember myself how lucky I am to be in that position and living off what I love most, which is driving. So that remind me how much I love the sport that I'm doing and how much I love what I do, no matter the situation I'm in.
Yeah, that's a beautiful mindset to have. And how have you kept that gratitude? Like, I'm listening to you right now and I just feel you sound so grateful and so happy to be here. It's not an egotistic arrogance, but it's a sense of like joy and excitement. Like you still have that freshness with it, even though you've done it for 20 years now.
Yeah.
Like, how have you kept that freshness? Like, what is it that makes you fall back in love with it? Because you're so young, but at the same time, you've done it for so long.
Exactly. Yeah. It's been 23 years that I'm in the sport now. So a very, very long time. But I don't know, just the adrenaline that it gives me, being lucky enough to work with so many incredibly talented people, because all the engineers, all the mechanics, all the people around the team are people that have focused their own life in order to arrive to the position they are in now. And to be able to work with so many incredible people is a big chance. So whenever I work with them, it's always super interesting. You learn every day in this sport because it's a very complex sport. There's the driving part, of course, but then there's all the technical parts of the cars. And yeah, just being able to stay with those people, speak with those super interesting people, and also do the driving, which is what I love the most, which is whenever I put the helmet on, I've got a smile on my face because the adrenaline that I get when I get on the throttle, getting out the pits, is something super special. So I love what I do.
Yeah, it sounds like you're so fearless on the track and you've built that mindset as time has gone on. What about off the track? Is there anything that scares you? Any fears that exist? Does that fearlessness on the track help you off the track, or is it just two different worlds and two different things?
No. Trust me, I'm scared of different things. Snakes, I hate. I hate snakes. I tried bungee jumping and I couldn't jump.
You didn't do it?
No, but it's weird because at the same time I did parachute, skydiving.
Skydiving, yeah.
And I loved it. But bungee jumping, I couldn't jump, so I was super scared. At the same time, as you said, whenever I'm in a race car, there's not 1% of me that is scared, just because being in control helps a lot, I think. And I'm never scared.
There's naturally those external things that scare you as well. And I wonder, you've been through, when I was looking back at your journey and listening, you've been through so much loss in your journey. And I think for you to continue to show up in the way you are right now with love and gratitude and joy, that takes even more courage. than sitting in a car and driving at that speed, because it's almost sometimes like emotional transformation is sometimes harder than physical and mental transformation. Like, walk us through the losses that you've endured and how you've been able to kind of channel that grief into growth.
I think it's made me grow faster. I lost my father in 2017, so I was obviously very young, and at this time of your career or your life, you need that person that helps you grow as a man and also as a driver, because he was basically my best mentor. He was also a driver himself back in the day, so obviously he was helping me with all his experience throughout the years that he've learned into racing. And to lose him at that age made me an adult much faster, because you get to manage your own things much earlier. Before that, I was just a kid. He will just bring me to the races. I will do what I love the most, which is driving, then flights, organization, planning. That was all on my father, and he was doing that perfectly. And he sacrificed a lot for me to get here. But then at one point, from one day to the other, there's not your father anymore, and you need to take all of these things in hands. I've got my younger brother also. My older brother he's 10 years older than me, so he was already an adult in a way, but my younger brother was 3 years younger than me. I had to take care of my mother as well. So all of these things, it's not something that comes natural when you are 17 or 18 years old. It took some time to get used to it, but I think we all got much closer in the family after that. It was a difficult moment as well to lose my father, because I think I was in the age of around 14 to 19 where you are always clashing a little bit with your parents. After that, I think it puts us all together much closer than before.
Yeah. What was it like racing that year? Like, you know, having to show up again now where you don't have your mentor and you don't have the person who believes in you and loves you and trains you. Like, what was that like? Because I think that's so brave and it requires an inner strength. Like, what was that for you? What was it like?
I don't know. It was on the Tuesday of Baku. I had a Formula 2 race. I was in Formula 2, not yet in Formula 1. And he passed away, I think, on the Tuesday, and I had the flight on the Wednesday to get to the race. As soon as he passed away, I asked myself, what would he want me to do? And I had no doubts. I mean, there was only one answer. He was living for racing. He loved so much racing, and he loved seeing me racing, and especially when I won. So I knew I had to go there and do absolutely everything to try and win the race. And that gave me an extra motivation as well, to make him proud from up there. So it was super important for me to do that.
What was his reaction when you won, and what was his reaction when you didn't win?
I think the honesty to myself always came from my father. He was always super honest with myself, with me. He was obviously harsh whenever things weren't going the way he wanted, or whenever he thought that there was a mistake that was to be made at that time of my career. But at the same time, incredibly happy whenever I won. You could really see how much it meant to him. So he was coming to absolutely every races. But I will say he was a bit of a different father on races, because the father tends to be always with the kids on races and always be there and pushing them. And he was always doing a step back on that, trying to let me grow in my own environments with my engineers, with my mechanics, and get there at the end of the weekend and then have the discussion at the end of the weekend. Okay, I saw that this you should have done better, but this was amazing. And he was always super supportive. And also in difficult moments, I think that's all you need sometimes. The good person, a person that is obviously close to you, that only wants good from you, for you, and that tells you supportive words. And I knew that this was a huge help that then I lost when I lost my father. Obviously, there was still my mum, but my mum doesn't have the technical knowledge that my father had on racing. But it's super important to have close people that then also along your career, whatever level you are at, can tell you the right things at the right moment for you. And this was super important to me.
Yeah, he sounds like an amazing man. He sounds like such a wonderful mentor to have in life. And is there any words of advice that he said to you, or something he shared with you that you feel you always kind of carry with you, whether it's on race day or in life? Is there something that he left you that you feel you always turn towards?
To always stay humble and grateful. I think these are the two words that he always said, because even when I was 6 or 7 years old, I've had years that were extremely good for me at that age, where I used maybe doing 24 races and I would win 18 of the 24 races. And at that age, you get carried away, like I'm the best, and this is for me. I'll get to Formula One, and he was always there. Charles, you're only 6 years old. Formula One is a very long way, so you need to keep working, stay humble. It was always in a funny way that I was doing that. I've never been arrogant in a way, because I think it's a trait of our family. We are all like this, but yeah, I think these are the two words that I always keep and remind me of it, and especially the grateful part.
Yeah. How do you stay humble when, like you said, you're racing the dream, you're driving Ferrari, like, you know, life's great, like things are awesome, opportunities are everywhere. Like and I can feel it from you, by the way. I believe it, and anyone who's listening or watching, I'm sure you can feel it. I can sense it just from sitting with you that it's true. How have you remained that way, and how do you train yourself to remain that way? Obviously it comes naturally in your family, which is beautiful, but is there a practice of tempering with your ego in a way that's helped you?
Not really.
Yeah.
Not really. No. I mean, to be humble, I think, I've never really worked for that. It's just words that my father told me, and I always remind myself, because, as I said, sometimes you can have 4 really, really good races and you feel like, okay, I found the rhythm, and it's very easy in those very, very good moments to maybe work a little bit less than in the very difficult moments. And this is maybe where sometimes I remind myself, Charles, yes, you are in a very good moment of your career, but that you still need to work as hard as in a very difficult moments, because all the people that are now struggling are going to work and going to catch up at one point. So you need to keep working as hard as possible. Where I have to do not a bit more work, but where I have to think a bit more, it's in the difficult moments to be still grateful to be in the position that I am. Because when you leave the moment and that you struggle with a race or 2-3 races in a row, lots of critics are coming to you. Obviously, it's a sport that is it's getting bigger and bigger, especially in the US now. It's getting huge. In Europe, it's always been huge. But there's a lot of pressure when you are a Ferrari driver as well, even more so, because it means a lot to people all around the world. And you need to manage those pressures in the difficult moments, and it might be difficult also to manage the opinion of others in those very difficult moments. And it might hurt you personally as well. That's where I always try and work on remembering how grateful I am and how lucky I am to be in that position.
Yeah, definitely. Was there a criticism or that kind of feedback that like hurt you the most, where you're like, oh, that was hard to deal with, that was difficult? What would that be if there was one?
The critics that hurts me the most are the ones that doesn't define me as a person. I think in the world we are living now with social media, everybody can give their opinion super easily. And also people that don't know you personally. Yeah, I remember like 2 or 3 years ago, someone would say, oh, look how arrogant he is. And these are critics that really hurts me, because I know I'm not like this. And it's difficult to accept them when you are not really like that. And I remember that hurting me personally. Then you always get critics on your driving, or if you do a mistake in a race or whatsoever. But this is part of the sport. This used to hurt me back, especially the first year in Formula One, because you get from a Formula 2 driver where there are no media, nobody talks about you, you do a mistake, and only my mum or my dad will say, okay, Charles, you did a mistake there, it's not good. Where you get to Formula 1 and then you are in the spotlight of absolutely everything. You do a mistake and hundreds or thousands of people are speaking about it on social media, which it takes a bit of time to get used to. I remember the first year in Formula 1, I got into Formula 1, I was watching absolutely everything that people will say about me, because it was new for me. And then you get to learn to just make sure that you only value what people you love most think about me. And that is only what matters to me.
I'll be honest, managing money has always been something I've had to stay mindful about. It feels like everywhere you turn, someone's trying to make you spend. That's where Acorns comes in. Acorns is a financial wellness app that makes it easy to start saving and investing for your future. You don't need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that matches you and your money goals. You don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you get started with the spare money you've got right now, even if all you've got is spare change. Sign up now and join the over 13 million all-time customers who have already saved and invested over $22 billion with Acorns. Plus, Acorns will boost your new account with a $20 bonus investment. Offer available at acorns.com/purpose. That's acorns.com/PURPOSE to get your $20 bonus investment today. Paid non-client endorsement. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 6 compensation provided. Investment involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/purpose.
I'm Cheryl Swoops, WNBA champ, 3-time Olympian, and Basketball Hall of Famer. I'm a mom and I'm a woman.
I'm Tarika Foster Brasby, journalist, sports reporter, basketball analyst, a wife, and I'm also a woman.
And on our new podcast, we're talking about the real obstacles women face day to day.
See, athlete or not, we all know it takes a lot as women to be at the top of our game.
We want to share those stories about balancing work and relationships, motherhood, career shifts. You know, just all the shit we go through.
Because no matter who you are, there are levels to what we experience as women.
And T and I, well, we have no problem going there.
Listen to Levels to This with Cheryl Swoops and Tarika Foster Brasby, an iHeart Women's Sports production in partnership with Deep Blue Sports and Entertainment. You can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey y'all, Nimini here. I'm the host of a brand new history podcast for kids and families called Historical Records. Executive produced by Questlove, The Story Pirates, and John Glickman, Historical Records brings history to life through hip-hop.
Smash, slam, another one gone. Bash, bam, another one gone. The crack of the bat and another one gone. The tip of the cap, cause another one gone.
Each episode is about a different inspiring figure from history. Like this one about Claudette Colvin, a 15-year-old girl in Alabama who refused to give up her seat on the city bus 9 whole months before Rosa Parks did the same thing. Check it.
And if you get with me, did you know, I wouldn't give up my seat. 9 months before Rosa, it was Claudette Colvin.
Get the kids in your life excited about history by tuning in to Historical Records. Because in order to make history, you have to make some noise. Listen to Historical Records on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, and that's hard to do. Like you said, like you go from being in Formula 2 where no one's talking about you to Formula 1 where everyone's talking about you. And I think people in the world have that experience as well, that we're now living at a time where everyone can comment, everyone can share, everyone can say something. I know I struggle to deal with it as well. Like I find it really difficult. And I love what you said, that it's always when it's about your character that it hurts more. If someone says like, oh, you didn't get that technical thing right, whatever, I can live with that. But it's really hard when it's about you as a human.
Yeah.
In your truth, when you're like, oh, no, I'm not like that. Like, I wish, I've said this before, I wish that if everyone who felt that way about me, I wish I could meet them personally.
Exactly.
And hold their hands and just talk to them for a second.
Yeah.
And say, look, this is who I truly am. And I'm so sorry that somehow you felt that I was that way. And whatever it was, I'm sorry that it made you feel that way. But I promise you, this is who I truly am. But
it's
you can't.
Exactly that. No, you can't. Too many people.
Yeah.
I always try also to use the social media in order to reflect my true self. Mm-hmm. Then if someone doesn't like my true self, and then it's like this. I won't be liked by everybody else by everybody in the world. This is normal. So I just need to be my true self. But as you said, it's just difficult when someone understand a trait of your personality wrong and then criticize it, and you're like, that's not me, and I wish I could prove you, but it's life.
Yeah, definitely. You were saying earlier that fear and what you're scared of. And I've read before that you've said that you're scared of when your brother's driving.
Yes.
Like that is something that you get scared about. So you're not scared when you're driving and you're in control, but when you're not in control, walk me through what goes through your mind. Like, what is that fear? What's that experience?
Because as much as I'm not scared for me at all, I'm still completely aware that it is such an incredibly dangerous sport. As much as there's been so much safety improvements over the years, it is and will always be a dangerous sport because we go at crazy speeds and anything can happen. Whenever I'm in control and I'm racing, not one part of me thinks about the potential risk I'm occurring doing that. However, when I see someone I love a lot doing exactly the same thing, then you see the things very differently. Of course, I'm always looking at the performance, but for me, what is the most important thing of all is his security, him making it safe to the end of the race, and then whatever else comes secondary. It's not as enjoyable to watch racing when my brother is racing because it's just super scary and I get super, super stressed.
What's the fastest you've ever been? And when you've watched your brother, what's the fastest he's ever been where you've been worried? Or was there a race where you felt like, that was the one?
Every
single
races.
one, it doesn't matter.
Every
Wow.
races is a torture.
So do you even watch?
No, I do.
You still watch because
Yes.
of the performance and you want to help him out.
But it's difficult because also we are on the same race weekends. And most of the times I've got meetings preparing my race at the same time of his race.
Right.
And so I need to look at the race, but at the same time be focused on my meeting. And this is the hardest task ever. But fastest speeds, probably 370 kph, which is around 230 miles per hour, I think, something like this. I don't think that is the impressive part of Formula One. The straight line speed is fast, but you don't really feel it in a car like a Formula One car. It's mostly the braking, the speed in the corners is something crazy and very difficult to put into words and to make it understand in a way.
No, I know. I only know how hard it is just from playing the video game.
Yeah.
Like that's already, you try play F1 video games, like it is one of the hardest things.
Do you play on the controller or do you have a simulator?
Oh no, I'm the controller. I haven't got the wheel.
Oh,
yeah.
You need
to get the wheel.
You need to get the wheel. You need to get the wheel.
Yeah, even that, you just recognize just how challenging it is. Like it's, when you're training, have you seen, obviously I'm sure you've seen, but when you're training, I'm sure there's accidents. I'm sure you see things that are painful to watch, either with yourself or with others you love. Like, how is that like when you're training? Because obviously in F1 they've made it safer and everything, but training is like training, right? It's not the same standards.
Well, first of all, it's a very different sport to others. Football or whatever other sports in the world, you can train as much as you want. In Formula One, you can't. I only have 3 days in the Formula One car over the year. And then it's the first race. That is the only practice I get. It's 3 days in the new car. You need to understand what's the behavior of the car.
That's not long at all.
That is nothing. And then all the rest is done virtually. So you practice on simulators without the controller, with the wheel this time. But you practice on simulators in order to get ready for the real thing. And then you've got 3 days in order to get up to speed, to understand tons of information from the car. That is mostly on the engineers to do that. And then you need to be ready at the first qualifying session a week later. This is very, very, very difficult. Then, as you were saying, we all know it's a dangerous sport. I've unfortunately lost my sporting godfather in 2014, Jules Bianchi, who was an incredible driver, and he had a fatal crash in Japan and lost his life there. And also another friend, Antoine, in 2019 in Belgium. And these are very, very difficult moments because then you are racing on this exact same track. You are going through the exact same corner where a person that you were close with lost his life. And this is the 2 moments in my entire career where you have a bit of negative thoughts going into that corner and you need to battle a bit through them in order to think about something else and get on with it. As much as it's difficult because a part of me was like, I cannot get on with it like nothing happened. But at the same time, you've got to do that at least as soon as you get inside the car until you get out of the car, you need to do that. You need to focus fully on driving. Otherwise, you are never able to extract the maximum out of the car.
Yeah, that balance between acceptance, we often think like it's acceptance or action. And actually, you're saying it's both together. There's an acceptance of the truth of what happened. And then at the same time, you have to drive. And it's not either or. It's not like, okay, I'm going to get over this and then we're going to drive, because that could take forever.
Yeah.
And you can't just drive and ignore it, because it will come up. And I remember one of my favorite movies is Rush with Niki Lauda and James Hunt. Like, that's probably one of my favorite movies. And you see so much of the world of like the ego, the fame, the success, the focus, the amount of effort, the competition, like you see the dangerous side of it. Like it's so well done, the movie. I've always been a fan. I wonder whether you're a fan of that movie or whether you're like, it's not like that at all.
No, I love it. I love it. I mean, I think it's a really good representation of what the sport was back then.
Yes. Not now, yeah.
And it was amazing to see how it was back then and how it is now, and how much everything has changed. And I also think that as much as today, when I say that I'm getting into the car and there's not one part of me that think about the danger, I really believe that 30, 40 years ago, that was completely different for the drivers back then. And I think it was the driver that was willing to get the closest to death that was the fastest, because they were so brave. The cars, I've driven old cars now, and there was no safety. Like where they had the legs is just something like this of metal, and if you take a wall, that's it. And obviously, I'm sure they had that in mind somewhere. Which now everything is so much safer that you don't think about it anymore. So I think the sport has evolved like crazy since then, but it's a great movie.
Yeah. No, and I love hearing that. Like, it's so interesting. Obviously, we know it's changed, but to hear about how much the cars have changed, how much safer they are, like the level of risk that a driver was taking back then is insane. It's unfathomable to even recognize, like you're saying. It's interesting for someone from the outside to even look at that. What was your favorite car that you've gone back and driven? Is there like a favorite era or like a favorite year that you've seen or exposed to, and why? Why is it special?
I've actually driven the Niki Lauda car.
Wow.
That was very, very special. Unfortunately, I had a problem on the car while driving on the brakes, which was pretty scary. But I really enjoyed driving that car. But it was completely different. I think also in terms of driving, it was super different. You had the gearbox, you had the shifter, so you had to press the clutch every time you will pass the gears, like in a normal car today. But now in a Formula One car, everything is electronic. So you pass the gears, you only press a button, you don't have to press the clutch, you don't have to press anything. And your brain can focus on many, many other things. We've got thousands of things going on the steering wheel that we need to touch while driving. But you haven't got to think about the gears anymore. Back then, I think the gears was a super important part of driving. But I really enjoyed driving this Lauda old cars. This was very special.
Yeah, it's amazing. I can imagine the amount of attention this takes. Like we said, you're on the road for a long time. You're doing so many races a year. You've got so many things happening in front of you while you're on the race. It's natural to experience burnout. Like, it's natural to become exhausted. Do you find that what do you do as recovery? Like you were saying, like, and you just came from the Brazil race, like just now, like what, a couple of days
2 years ago, yeah.
2 days ago. Like, what did you have to do in those 2 days to just feel normal again, if normal's even a reality?
I love music. I play piano. And
I've seen videos of it.
Yeah.
You're pretty good, yeah.
Kind of,
yeah,
but
okay.
Good enough to enjoy it and to disconnect from everything. And for me, piano and music in general is an amazing way of disconnecting myself from the pressure of Formula One, from Formula One as a whole.
You don't sing though?
I don't.
No.
Better.
Yeah.
I don't sing. just playing the piano.
Yeah.
But playing the piano is definitely one of the thing I love most, to disconnect and recharge my batteries.
And has that been a part of your life for a long, long time through the whole journey?
Actually, not at all. I started during COVID.
Wow.
Lots of time at home. I had a simulator, so I was driving a lot virtually
Twitch,
every day. But with Twitch actually. But after 2 weeks and a half doing that all day was getting quite tiring. So I bought a piano. I started then, and I loved it.
Wow. Yeah. And what is it that, like, how have you simply taught yourself to play? Like, is that how it's worked, or?
Yes, I always, when we were younger, my younger brother used to have a piano. So I sometimes was playing on it, but I never took like courses or whatsoever. And I thought COVID was a great time to try and learn it a bit more, pushing a bit more and trying to understand a bit more how everything works. So I took some lessons, like 5 or 6, but very quickly I realized that I wasn't done for lessons. So I just taught myself the piano and tried to come up with melodies and musics that I enjoyed. Yeah, sometimes I thought I would be on the piano since an hour, and I would look the time and it would be 4 or 5 hours past. I just really, really liked it.
Yeah. It's nice to hear that you've had, and I guess COVID was a surprising time where people had a bit more time or to take up hobbies and try new things. But I've always found that, especially Formula One, like, it's so grueling. There's so much attention required. There's so much focus required. How has and we were just talking about it when you came in today, like, you don't have that much time for a personal life. You've got the events in between. You've got, like, how have you made sense of that? What does your personal life look like when you do have time? How much time do you get a year, actually? Let's start there. Like, how much time do you get a year where you actually got time for your family, your friends, and yourself?
I will say maybe 40 days.
40 days.
Yeah, like 30, 40 days a year. We've got 2 weeks and a half in August, and then 2 weeks and a half in December. So for Christmas and everything. But then also with Formula One, the good thing is that we travel all over the world, but years after years, you also go to always the same places. Which then you meet new people in this city, and then you've got group of friends a little bit everywhere around the world, which is also super nice. So whenever I go to Brazil, here in Los Angeles, Miami, I've got my group of friends there. So it's always great to come back to a race. Obviously, you want to drive as much as possible and be in the car again as soon as possible, but at the same time, you've got your friends there. So it's not like my private life is suffering a lot from it. Mm-hmm. My mom also now can follow me on races. I think it's more when I was a kid. There it was a bit more difficult in a way that you are, sometimes you are leaving school for 2 or 3 weeks for different races. And there you don't spend as much time with your home friends. I used to not speak Italian and English when I was a kid, so you get to the karting tracks and you cannot really speak with anybody. So that is a bit more the difficult part, but at the same time, I was so incredibly happy to go to the racetrack to drive karting. That was making it all up for it.
In a galaxy far, far away.
No, babe, that's taken. We're in our own world, remember?
Right. In our own world, we're 2 space cadets.
And totally normal humans.
Sure, totally normal humans.
Embark on a journey across the stars, discovering the wonders of the universe, 1 episode at a time.
We'll talk about life, love, laughter, and why you should never argue with your co-pilot.
Especially when she's always right.
Right. And if we hit turbulence, just blame it on Mercury retrograde.
Or Emily's questionable space piloting skills.
Hey! Join us on In Our Own World for cosmic conversations, stellar laughs,
and super corny dad jokes.
Listen to In Our Own World as a part of the My Cultura podcast network, available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't worry, we promise to avoid any black holes.
Most of the time.
Hey friends, I'm Jessica Capshaw.
And this is Camilla Luddington.
And we have a new podcast. Call it what it is. You may know us from Graceland Memorial, but did you know that we are actually besties in real life?
And as all besties do, we navigate the highs and lows of life together.
And what does that look like? 1,000 pep talks, 1,000,000 I've got yous, some very urgent I'm coming overs. Because, I don't know, let's face it, life can get even crazier than a season finale of Grey's Anatomy.
And now here we are, opening up the friendship circle to you.
Someone's cheating?
We've got you on that.
In-laws are in line?
Let's get into it.
Toxic friendship?
Air it out.
We're on your side to help you with your concerns, talk about ours, and every once in a while, bring on an awesome guest to get their take on the things that you bring us.
While we may be unlicensed to advise, we're going to do it anyway.
Listen to Call It What It Is on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What's up, y'all? This is Questlove, and at QLS I get to hang out with my friends, Sugar Steve, Laia, Fontigolo, Unpaid Bill, and we, at Questlove Supreme like to nerd out and do deep dives with musicians and actors and politicians and journalists.
We give you the stories behind all your favorite artists and creatives that you have never heard. I'm talking about stories behind their life journeys and their works of art.
I love QLS because of the QLS Team Supreme. They're like a second family to me.
If you're a fan of deep diving into music, everything, almanacking your musical history, and learning things about hip-hop artists and things you never thought, then you're a lot like me. But you're also a fan of Questlove Supreme.
One of the things I love the most about this show is that we get to learn from the masters. I look at being on this show as my graduate program in music.
Listen to Questlove Supreme on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Suprema!
Yeah. Are there any other athletes or any other sports or even musicians, maybe even because of or architects, engineers that you've kind of like looked to and been inspired by and pulled from? Have you studied people that you find fascinating or that kind of become your guidance and mentors, even if you don't know them personally, or is it very much a personal love and a personal inspiration thing?
I really try to be the best version of myself. Having said that, there was one driver that for me was the best of all time, was Ayrton Senna. I've never had the chance because I'm too young to have witnessed him in real life, but obviously through movies, some books, I could learn more about his person and what he's done in Formula One. And he's always been a person that I've admired. And he was also the idol of my father. So I think that played a part into it as well.
What was it specifically about the way he raced that from what you've seen in footage and books? What was it about him?
Just the precision that he had at that time. It was also in the time where we were mentioning before, in a much more dangerous time of Formula One. Sadly, he lost his life on the track, but he was so precise and he was extremely special in Monaco. He was special everywhere, but in Monaco even more so. And being in Monaco, watching the videos of his onboard camera, of his qualifying laps around Monaco is just crazy.
Have any simulators ever done this where you could race alongside legendary racers? Does that exist? Like, have you, like, if you wanted to race him?
Maybe like games.
Yeah, games.
But not like proper Formula One simulators.
Yeah,
no. Our simulator is crazy.
Yeah.
It's in a room that is maybe
this
5 or 6 times bigger than this one. And it's like a huge simulator moving everywhere to try and reproduce the G-forces. So now they are really pushed, but you're only racing on your own. So you cannot reproduce a race or whatsoever. You're just doing laps on your own.
That simulator, where is that station? Like, where do you go?
In Maranello.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that simulator you're in all year round. The 3 days are in the real car.
Yes. So you do 3 days in the real car and then everything else is on the simulator.
Walk us through what that simulator feels like. Like, what you described it briefly there, but like walk us through like what does it give you and what does it not give you?
So what it gives you extremely well is that the engineers have managed to reproduce extremely close to the real car, the feeling that you get in the real car. The thing that it doesn't give you and will, I think, never ever give you is obviously the adrenaline first, because you know you're on a simulator, you crash, you press the restart button and you go again, which in reality is a bit more difficult. And also the G-forces, because we've got a huge platform which reproduces the G-forces, but you're only going from right to left and then it stops. In a Formula One car, when you turn right, then the G-forces are always there until you stop turning right, which makes a big difference. Because to be precise on a platform that is quite stable is one thing. To be precise in a Formula One car with all the vibrations, with all the G-forces that your body go through is a complete other. So it makes things a bit more complicated.
It's fascinating to even think that you have to do something for work that you don't actually get to do. And it's phenomenal how smart and astute and intense you have to be in order to make it all come together. I wanted to ask you, I was thinking about this before, and I'm bringing it back because I wanted to ask you, if your father was here now and he was getting to watch you now, like, what do you think he'd say to you? Like, how do you think he'd respond to the journey that you're on?
I think he will be extremely proud because he passed away a year before I got into Formula One. It was very difficult because I unfortunately I hadn't signed my Formula One contract, which was the ultimate goal for our family. I mean, Formula One is really where you want to get. Once you start a racing career, that's where you want to be one day. But I had lied to him 2 days before he passed away, and I told him, listen, I signed my Formula One contract. The year was going well. I was quite confident that this will happen, but I also knew it was a matter of days before he will pass away. And I remember that night that I said it to my mum, and my mum was pretty angry with me, telling me, you shouldn't lie to your father. And that stayed in me for months. And luckily, I signed my contract a month later. He wasn't here anymore. And then I found much more peace within myself because I told myself, okay, I didn't lie, my father. And I told him the truth. I anticipated things, but everything is okay. And that was a really good moment because, as I said, Formula One is really the goal for every driver. And it was difficult to, accept that he will go away without knowing what was the rest. But I think he will be really proud. As much as on track at the moment this year, not going too much into the specific, but it's not the best year ever. We are struggling a little bit with our car performance. But yeah, I'm still driving for Ferrari and in Formula One, so he will be happy.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, you shared that with Cristiano Ronaldo has a similar story with his father. Like his father never really got to see him become Cristiano Ronaldo, and the idea of like how hard it is when like, you know, you have a father who believes in you and loves you and wants you to become phenomenal. And I can't remember the exact year that he lost his father, but his father never got to see him reach the heights that he did. But of course, it's beautiful to hear that. I'm so glad you could share it with him. That's such a special. I'm so glad you got to tell him that, and I'm so glad it became true.
Me too. I think I will have lived so badly with a lie like this for the rest of my life. So I'm happy. I did everything for it to happen. It happened, and he also sacrificed a lot for me. I never like to say that I sacrificed anything in my life because I didn't. I just did everything that I wanted to do, which was racing. As much as, yes, I wasn't a lot of time at home when I was a kid, but I was spending my time on track, which was what I love doing the most. He, on the other hand, sacrificed a lot because motorsport is unfortunately a very expensive sport. He had to do saving for me to be able to do what I love most, which was driving. And I was aware of that. And also the fact that obviously my mum, he couldn't see my mum that much because he was always with me on races. So I think he made many more sacrifices than I did, because for me it was always a pure pleasure.
Is driving a lonely sport? I imagine that everyone's quite competitive. Like I can't imagine drivers being friends and hanging out afterwards because I don't know. I mean, tell me. Tell me.
Actually, I've got a really good friend on the grid, Pierre Gasly. We grew up together. We started in karting. We did our first race together in 2005. So we were, like 7-8 years old. We did the French Championship together and we became super good friends. Our family are super close as well. So we used to go on holidays together. And then we found ourselves in Formula One now. So, but trust me, as soon as I close the visor and I'm with a helmet, he's nobody anymore. And that's the same for him. And we know that. But whenever we are outside the car, we have a really, really strong friendship. So you can have friends, but it's very difficult to create friendships if you didn't know that person before getting into Formula One, because it's such a competitive world. Everybody wants to have the upper hand. Everybody wants to do everything in his own benefit, because at the end we want to win. We want to be the best on track. So there's a lot of respect, but we are not giving anything away to the others. And as much as I'm friend with Pierre, I'm not giving him any advices or whatsoever. I just want to beat him as much as I want to beat everybody else on track. But Lonely sport, I don't think it is, because at the end it's a team sport. The only thing is that the team is working a bit in the shadow, because when you watch Formula One, you see mostly the driver driving the car, but behind that, the mechanics are making sure that they mount everything perfectly. The engineers are working in trying to optimize the car in the best possible way. Then there's a lot of strategy during the race. So there are many people in the background speaking and connected to me through the radio. So I need to speak with the guys on in the pits while I'm driving, and it's a big part of racing.
What are your dreams and visions of, wanting to be one of the best and winning a world championship? What would that mean to you? Like, how important is that? What does that mean to you? What would it feel like? Like, what fuels you and drives you to go in that direction?
Just to be the number one. Just the feeling of the victory. Obviously, I won a few races in Formula One, and the feeling that you get once you get that win is incredible, because you've done the best on track, but it depends on so many other people doing the right thing. Is that whenever you do it, it's such an incredible joy, not only for you, but for more than 1,500 people that are back at the factory in Maranello working for the Formula One program. So it's crazy. There are so many people involved, and whenever you achieve that as a team, it's such an incredible feeling. Yeah, victory, the taste of victory is what motivates me. Every morning I wake up and I think about that. Every day that is a bit more difficult to wake up and go in training, I think about winning a world championship one day and the feeling that it gives me. And so, yeah, this is what motivates me.
Yeah, let's manifest it right now, like you did with what you said to your father. Like, let's fast forward and it's manifested. The world championships here. What would you say to that self from here? What would you say to your future self?
Well done, first. That is a pretty easy one.
Yeah.
To remember all your career journey. And your journey, and to remember every single difficult moments where you thought you wouldn't make it. These difficult moments that I went through my career, sometimes you tend to think, I'm not going to make it to Formula One. I'm not going to make it to become a world champion. So yeah, if I become world champion, I will tell that to myself, to think about every single moment where I thought this wouldn't be possible. And this is also something that I tell